Thank you, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Barry, and the title of this presentation is The Common Sense Clean Energy Solution, because we're going to talk about the duck curve, and we're going to go beyond that and talk about kind of the kinds of things that we need to do to address the duck curve and fix the problems that have been caused by too many intermittent renewables that have been imposed on our California system and that we've installed. I also thought about renaming this presentation to California Energy Policy, Future or Farce, because we tend to look at California, some people tend to look at California as where we are going to be headed, and having experienced a lot of what we have, we look at it more as a sort of a canary in the coal mine, and let's look at the lessons that you can learn from our experiment of what's going on in California. Because there will be changes based on some of the successes and the failures of California. So let's talk a little bit about our state. The driver of our energy policy, this is a quote from our governor, Gavin Newsom: "The future happens here first." And California is once again showing the world what real climate action looks like. And that's important to understand, that this is what's driving policymakers in California. So you've got three branches of government that are all progressive, liberal. There's no controls, there's no sort of like middle of the road. And everybody, and those policymakers want to address climate change. So that's the thing that's driving them. So when you look at, why do they do that? It's because California wants to be climate leaders. And we have people that are not only in our legislature and at our state agencies, but also on our local boards that are driving our local utilities to be as green as possible. So we're handling that. And by the way, since I brought that up, does anybody here have an elected official on their local board that kind of leans green and has moved the discussion in your community toward being green? Okay, a few of you. Yeah, you only need one to move that debate in that direction. They might not win the day, but nevertheless the conversation is happening. So when we think about climate change, there's science that we can look at, but ultimately it comes down to California wants to act now, and it wants to show the world the path forward. So let me brag a little bit on some of the accomplishments that California has made. And we have lowered the cost of solar and wind for you, so that we've bought serial numbers 001 of everything, high cost, and now you get to enjoy those benefits of more mass production. So we've also brought other states along by showing our example. And whether it's the right direction or the wrong direction, we're still leading. We're going somewhere, and you can look at what we've done to decide if it's something that you want to do, you want to get behind. This is a chart that shows, and it's just important to look at the two extremes there, of the accomplishment that we've made in energy efficiency. And that is, on the far right is the use of energy from 2008 to 2024 in Texas. Texas has used a lot more energy. And on the far left, the energy efficiency accomplishments of California. So we're using far less energy, and you can get a copy of the presentation to see where your state is. But there's plenty of states that are being more aggressive when it comes to energy efficiency. So not only are we talking about renewables and intermittent renewables, but we're also have a significant effort in energy efficiency. And again, just looking at the two extremes, in 2008, we were at 3% renewables in the state, and in 2023, 25%, or actually 24 is more like 26%. So we've come pretty far in just the last decade and a half. And this is a summary of our aggressive climate goals. 60% renewables at every utility level, 60% renewables by 2030. So in the next 5.5 years, 5.25 years, we got to get to 60%. And you saw we're at 24% today. So that's a big jump, 35%, that's far. And then 100% clean energy, so that's just decarbonized energy. That could include, biomass. It could include, biomass is renewable. It can include carbon capture and sequestration in that extra 40% between 2030 and 2045. So to sum it all up, our identity, our brand is green. And probably if we took a poll, it would be 100%. If you thought about California, what's your idea? Oh yeah, everybody would say California green. That's the identity. So that's where we're coming from. That's the driver behind all of our aggressive climate policies and energy efficiency and renewable energy policies. So we need to get from where we are, and this was in 2021, this includes some decarbonized power and hydro, to 60%. So it's hard to get there. It's going to be very hard to get there. And here's what's happening. Utilities are now fighting over projects. As public power utilities, we issue RFPs for power supply. And SCAPPA, the Southern California Public Power Authority, the joint action agency in Southern California, they have an open RFP process. And in 2017, they got 138 responses, proposals. And in 2024, they got 26. So there's fewer projects that are being proposed, and this is statewide. There's just not enough projects happening, and no cost guarantee. There's no timeline for when the project is going to be online. Now remember, we have a regulated goal of 2030, and vendors are telling us, well, we could do that maybe by 2033 or so. And we're like, well, wait a minute, but we have this regulatory goal. They're not going to do it. They're not meeting that for us. And no liquidated damages because they can't promise a deadline, and everybody's doing the same thing. So we know today in 2024 that we believe we cannot meet the goals of 2030 that are laid out, the 60% goals, and we're beginning to talk about it. So yeah, that's our prediction. It's not going to happen. And other companies are scrapping their 2030 or decarbonization goals. New Zealand Air recently scrapped their goals. Google gave up on their goals, and they say they're going to continue to try to be green, but nevertheless they've paused. So we wrote a paper that is written sort of toward an 8th grade level. It's called the All the Above Clean Energy Solution, and I brought some copies that are on the front here, but it's also available online at our website, cmua.org, and I'll put up the link to it. But if you'd like to get a copy, but again, it's written at that 8th grade level so that people at Rotary clubs and chambers of commerce all around the state can begin to get the message that this is hard, this is a challenge, and it's looking like we're not going to meet those goals. It's still far away, so people might say, well, something will happen, things will change, you'll get there. Nevertheless, we want to start talking about it now, because if we wait till 2029, then we're like, wait, why didn't you tell us earlier? Well, we've been talking about it for 5 years. And then, of course, we have reliability problems all over the country, so power supply is tight. And you heard Todd talk about that yesterday. And so that's just a problem. We're part of that. We're part of those reliability issues. It's kind of every utility, every region for itself. There's no coordinated effort. Other issues, the Dunkelflaute, which is when the wind doesn't blow. So it's not just we can't just have a 15% reserve margin. We have to have a reserve margin for wind of like 40%, an overbuild with with a variety in our geography as well. So, wind is not going to carry the day. And this is a power supply chart showing a day in April 21st, so a nice spring day when renewable energy, the line there at the top, solar and wind, pretty much generated all the power supply that we needed across the state. And the stuff you see that line, this horizontal line here, that's zero. And the stuff underneath is excess power that we are exporting and charging up batteries for, the late evening. And so we have days in the spring and fall when we have zero fossil energy that's needed. That's what too much solar looks like when everything else is shut off. We still have a nuclear plant that has to be on all the time and other facilities that have to stay warm. But nevertheless, it leads to curtailment. We have a lot of solar and wind that we just have to shut off. And this is a typical spring or fall day where we're curtailing, sometimes more than 4,000 megawatts of power supply, in a 58,000 megawatt statewide system. That's a lot. That's 8%. That curtailment is not just spring and fall. It's actually all year long. And this shows that even in the summer, the light blue bars on the left, the smaller bars, even in the summer, we're curtailing power. We're over generating, and there's no effort to not build solar we're not building much more wind in the state, but we're still building lots of solar. We just no controls over that. People want to build it, they can build it, and we just curtail it. So, but you see that in March and April, we're dumping a lot of power that's just not getting used. This is what a big heat day looks like. So, a September day. Well, no, I'm sorry, not September. This is July. And you see the solar and wind there, that green. So we're getting a lot of power supply from them, but also natural gas. So California is using plenty of natural gas, and we're going to maintain those facilities. We'd like to actually rebuild them, but we can't make them cleaner. But we're operating, dirty facilities, and we're going to need them for a long time because we're not going to be able to install enough batteries and other energy storage to complete the entire day for power supply. And we are installing a lot of batteries. We have a little over 10,000 megawatts of batteries and heading up to about 12,000 very soon. So we've got a lot of batteries on the system. Again, 12,000 megawatts out of a 58,000 megawatt system, that's a lot of batteries just to shore up the solar and wind. And don't try to read this graph, just notice that the bars go up. This is a summary of our independent system operators' proposal to build more transmission. We looked at their proposal and thought, well, that looks like it's costly. Let's analyze what the cost is going to be. And basically the costs were expected to double in transmission. So transmission, yes, it's a solution, and we need to build transmission selectively so that it's we're cautious and we're being cost effective. Nevertheless, if we build everything that's proposed, costs will double. What's the impact on rates? Well, our rates, we're considered golden at about 18 cents a kilowatt hour average. The munis are like really sitting pretty. So when you think 18 cents, like that's kind of high. Well, in California, that's pretty moderate because the investor-owned utilities are, the lowest cost one is 38 cents a kilowatt hour. PG&E's 41 cents, and San Diego Gas and Electric close to 55 cents a kilowatt hour. Average residential price. And yes, I actually said that, like 30, 40, 50 cents a kilowatt hour. Those are big numbers. I don't see anybody falling over in their chair, but you should be, because those prices are practically unsustainable for people trying to live and have businesses. It's just super high. And they're predicted to go even higher. Those are just the average increases off to the side, sort of 30, 40, 50% increases and more expected into the future. So yeah, that's our identity, but it's making us crazy. It's really making us crazy. And it's hard to believe being, at 18 cents is good looking, but that's what we are. So let's look at some of the lessons learned. And the most important one, I think, is the message for you to bring back to your management, back to your boards, is don't shut off any dispatchable capacity until you've got a replacement that is equivalent. Okay, so hold on to your dispatchable capacity. People may want to move you in a direction of more solar, more wind, whatever. That's okay. Just hold on to your existing facilities. So this does create some opportunities for us, and one of them is in electric vehicles. This is for all of us, load growth. And it's pretty good, consistent load growth that your customers are demanding on their own. So this is electric vehicles worldwide. That was in 2023, 4 million units sold, but it's expected to go by 2040 up to 56 million. We'll see how that's going. Electric vehicles are having their own, controls. Now that the initial wave of people bought electric vehicles, maybe the next group of folks behind them won't be as quick to adopt them. Nevertheless, they are a phenomenon, they do work, and your customers are going to be buying them if they're not buying them already. Now the question is, can we actually support that as utilities? And when we add a level 2 charger, it can sometimes double at least by a third to double, demand for a house. Now, interestingly, electric vehicles don't all charge simultaneously. They don't charge every night. Does anybody here have an electric car? Okay. Do you charge it every single day? No? Okay. And that's, very typical. That you may charge it every 2 or 3 days. And so there is variability in charging and in demand, and then you can control that even further by going to your customers and saying, we need to make sure you charge at certain times, or here's some time of use pricing to encourage you to charge at certain times. So it is controllable. Can we handle 100%? It's unclear, but with a lot of variety. And now is a time to go to electric vehicle owners and say, we need you to charge at different times because people are open to doing that, as opposed to coming in 10 years and saying, oh, we got a problem and you can no longer charge your vehicle at any time of day. Like, oh, now that's a restriction. But if you're helping us with the grid, then that's okay. SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, found this out by going to its customers and saying, we need your help. They have this advertising campaign, call us first. And electric vehicle owners are really eager to talk to the utility about what they're doing. And SMUD found this additional benefit of going to it, of asking customers to call. Their customer satisfaction scores went up because they had customers calling them. They're asking their customers to call them. And their customers like them more because they're having this advisory role. So SMUD is sort of acting like a therapist for customers that are installing or buying electric cars, and they get on the same wavelength. It's kind of nice. And then electric bikes. Who would have thought that we'd see all this growth in electric bikes? Now, they're really not a huge demand to our system, but nevertheless, what's happening is our customers are just being themselves, and we need to pay attention to what they're doing. Anybody here have an electric bike? One person? Okay. Now, electric bikes, be careful if you buy one because the accident rate is higher than regular bikes. It's the highest form of all transportation. Be careful. And the reason why is because, bikes don't stop at stop signs. So now you're riding 30 miles an hour going through a stop sign as opposed to, going 7. Anyway, be careful.
It's my wife.
It's your wife's, okay. Well,
We need to tell her.
How's your insurance policy?
That's how she did it.
And
That's
of
how she can keep up with me.
So we've talked a bit about data centers, and obviously we know that there's potential growth in data centers as well. So bringing this in for a landing, what are the lessons learned here, and what should you do? The advocates say you just got to build solar, wind, and batteries, and that's it. And we have to push back. And we can't say no, but what we can do is say, well, that's a good idea. Let's look at all the resources that are available to us. We differ by region all across the country, and we want to make sure we keep our conventional energy, our dispatchable energy available to us. The real solution is this all the above. And in the presentation, it's cmua.org/all, and that's how you can get a copy of that report. You have to talk about it too. Don't assume that other people know what's in our heads. They don't. They absolutely don't. So we have to get out and talk about it. And if there are negative impacts on our electric system, we have to tell people what those are and then move people in the right direction. We did a survey at CMUA just asking customers across the state, what do they want from us, utilities? And they basically said, one, do your job. Keep the lights on, control costs, which that makes sense to us as community-owned utilities. But they also said, talk to me. Let me know what's going on. So tell your communications departments. It's good to talk to your customers and share the good and the bad of the changes in the electric system. So to conclude, from California, the climate's changing, okay? This green revolution is happening. Depending on where you are, it may be a different speed, but nevertheless, we're moving in that direction. There are problems. There's this overemphasis on a single strategy of solar and wind and batteries. We've seen supply chain slowdowns, and that's not speeding up much. So time frames for getting stuff installed are still delayed. And then the focus on reliability and affordability. This is a problem, and you have to hold that torch for keeping the lights on and controlling costs. Let people know what that is. And having this common sense strategy, it depends on working together. So like we're here at an APPA conference. We have so many colleagues nationwide, statewide, in our region that may be doing things that we can learn from, and we need to continue to do that. People want to share, so learn from your neighbors and work with your state association, your joint action agencies, and through APPA, because they're a great resource for connecting us. And then, talk about this all the above, because the more we say it, the more folks will say, yeah, that makes sense. We need to look at a variety of options. And then and then make sure they know what's important on reliability and affordability. So this is our job as community-owned utilities: keep the lights on, control costs, make sure we've got clean, dispatchable power, and bottom line, serve our communities.